In the midst of the hustle and bustle of boarding a packed flight, executives adjusted their impeccable suits, families struggled to accommodate their carry-on luggage, and flight attendants tried to organize the final details before takeoff. The atmosphere in first class exuded luxury and exclusivity. Among the distinguished passengers was Barron Trump, only 8 years old, son of President Donald Trump. Tall for his age, with discreet manners and a curious gaze, he settled into the spacious window seat, flipping through the in-flight menu. Meanwhile, a slight buzz began to spread through the cabin. Some people leaned forward in their seats, others whispered among themselves, clearly excited. "It's Clint Eastwood," someone murmured. Barron looked up, curious, and soon spotted the legendary actor entering the cabin. In his 90s, Clint displayed the same charisma that had made him a cinema icon. His time-worn face seemed to carry the wisdom of a lifetime, while his serene presence inspired respect without needing to say a single word. But something seemed out of the ordinary. Clint's assistant was calmly arguing with a flight attendant. A reservation error had placed the actor in economy class, despite first class being completely full. Observing the situation, Barron felt a sudden impulse. He stood up, walked over to Clint, and with a voice firm for his age said, "Mr. Eastwood, please accept my seat. It's important to me." Clint looked visibly surprised. He hesitated for a moment, assessing the young boy in front of him. "Are you sure, kid?" he asked, his deep and distinctive voice resonating. But Barron had already made his decision. "I am, sir. I want you to be comfortable." Barron's gesture did not go unnoticed by the other passengers. Clint, grateful, accepted the offer and settled into the spacious seat that had previously belonged to the boy. Despite his naturally serious expression, gratitude was evident in his eyes. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured, almost as a reminder to himself. Barron simply smiled in response before moving to economy class. In economy class, Barron found a central seat. On one side, an animated salesperson seemed ready for a long conversation, and on the other, a child cried nonstop. Despite the discomfort, Barron remained calm. He put on his headphones and resigned himself to the situation. Meanwhile, in first class, Clint couldn't stop thinking about the young boy who had given up his seat. Throughout decades of his career, he had witnessed many actions, but few like that, spontaneous and altruistic. Taking out his notebook, a habit from years of writing scripts and directing films, Clint began to jot down ideas, feeling inspired as he hadn't in a long time. After an hour of flight, the apparent tranquility was interrupted by an unexpected alert. The aircraft began to shake violently as severe turbulence took hold of the sky. The fasten your seatbelts lights flickered, and the flight attendants hurried to their seats. Barron, in economy class, felt his heart race. Next to him, the child cried even louder, while the previously talkative salesperson, now huddled, gripping the seat back tightly. In first class, Clint also felt the discomfort. Despite his steady posture, the intensity of the turbulence was evident. He held onto the armrests tightly, but his thoughts kept returning to the young boy who had given up his seat. Was Barron okay? The turbulence seemed endless, and passengers began exchanging nervous glances. Then, a crack echoed through the cabin, followed by a brief blackout of the interior lights. The captain announced that the plane had been caught by an unexpected weather system and asked everyone to remain calm. But the tone of his voice did not convey reassurance. Barron took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Despite the discomfort, he seemed more concerned about the child next to him, who was sobbing in fear. He gently smiled at her and said, "It's going to be okay." With that, the little girl, even in tears, squeezed Barron's hand as if she completely trusted his words. When the turbulence finally began to subside, a wave of relief swept through the cabin. Sighs of relief, whispered prayers, and small smiles started to emerge among the passengers. Clint, unable to wait any longer, defied instructions and stood up. He needed to check on how Barron was doing. Ignoring the curious looks, Clint walked over to economy class. He found Barron still in the central seat, surrounded by the chaos that turbulence had left behind. But the boy, though visibly tense, was calm and serene. Clint approached and asked, "Can I sit here for a while?" Surprised, Barron nodded, and Clint settled into the seat next to him. People around watched in awe at the unlikely scene. The legendary Clint Eastwood, a cinema icon, sitting right in economy class next to the young son of a president. During the next hour, Clint and Barron talked calmly. Clint, curious, asked, "Why did you give up your seat for me?" Barron shrugged before answering, "It seemed like the right thing to do. You're a legend and have inspired so many people. I thought I could give back in some way." Clint smiled slightly, shaking his head. "I never imagined something so simple could mean so much." Barron returned the smile. "It's not about the seat, but about the intention." The two continued exchanging ideas, reflecting on careers, life, and choices. In that moment, they were not a veteran actor and a young heir. They were just two people connected by a genuine gesture. The plane finally landed, bringing collective relief to the passengers. Some applauded the crew for the smooth landing, while others simply let out long sighs of gratitude for being on solid ground. But something beyond the landing had transformed that flight into a unique experience. The conversation between Clint Eastwood and Barron Trump in economy class had captured everyone's attention nearby, generating a mix of curiosity and emotion. As passengers began to stand up, Clint and Barron walked together to the plane's exit. Despite all the attention directed at them, both seemed immersed in their own reflections. Clint, discreetly, placed a hand on Barron's shoulder, signaling a gesture of camaraderie that did not go unnoticed by the other passengers. At the disembarkation, however, awaited a scene no one expected. Paparazzi and reporters were already positioned, ready to capture any detail of the legendary actors and the young presidential heir's trip. A flight attendant, impressed by Barron's gesture and the interaction between the two, had shared the event on social media, and the story went viral even before the plane touched the ground. Clint, experienced with the media, quickly protected Barron from the harassment. With a serious demeanor, he told the journalists, "No statements, folks. Today we did our best and need privacy." The flashes continued to go off, but Clint's authoritative voice momentarily calmed the frenzy. Barron, visibly uncomfortable, thanked him with a slight nod as they left the airport together. Inside the car that took them away, Clint looked at Barron and asked, "Are you ready for everything that's coming?" The boy hesitated before responding, "Nothing in life has prepared me for this, but I'm ready to face it." Clint narrowed his eyes and replied with a cornered smile, "You have something that can't be learned from books, character." A few days later, Barron was at home when he received an unexpected call. The number on the screen was unknown, but upon answering, he immediately recognized the hoarse and deep voice of Clint Eastwood. "Barron, do you have a minute to talk?" Surprised, Barron replied affirmatively, and Clint continued, "I've been thinking about our conversation during the flight. I'm starting to work on a new project, something about empathy and how small gestures can change lives, and I wanted you to be a part of it." Barron was speechless for a few seconds before responding, "But I'm not an actor." Clint laughed on the other end of the line. "You don't need to be. Your story already inspired me to start. Now, I just need you to share your perspective." With the memory of the flight still fresh in his mind, Barron accepted the invitation. He knew it wouldn't just be a cinematic project. It would be an opportunity to amplify the message that small acts of kindness can generate significant impacts. A week later, Barron arrived at Clint Eastwood's studio. The environment was bustling with life, with tables covered in scripts, notes, and scene drawings. Clint, already fully immersed in the project, welcomed Barron with a warm smile. "Welcome," he said, pointing to a chair next to his work desk. "This is where ideas take shape." Barron, still a bit intimidated by the grandeur of the setting, sat down and watched Clint flipping through some scribbled pages. "What made you give up your seat that day?" the director asked, leaning slightly to hear the response better. Barron thought for a moment before answering. "I've always believed that small actions matter. My parents, each in their own way, have always done great things for the world. But I think kindness starts with simple gestures." Clint nodded, visibly impressed by the boy's response. "You know, kid, that's a rare perspective, and it's exactly what I want to capture in this film. Not about great heroes or grand feats, but about how small choices shape the world around us." As he spoke, Clint scribbled notes in a notebook, turning Barron's words into elements of the screenplay. As the days passed, the project began to take shape. The film, provisionally titled The Power of a Gesture, would be an intertwined plot composed of different stories, all connected by the impact of small acts of kindness. Clint brought his experience and his classic vision of cinema, while Barron injected a young and sincere perspective, contributing ideas and reflections based on his experiences. One particular scene caught both of their attention. Directly inspired by the flight, it showed an older man giving up his last comfort to a crying child. This simple act triggered a chain of events that transformed an entire community. During the filming of this scene, Clint couldn't contain his emotion. "This was only possible because you reminded me that heroism often lies in the details," he said to Barron, who was attentively watching from backstage. As production progressed, the power of a gesture began to attract media attention and film critics even before its completion. The collaboration between Clint Eastwood, a veteran icon, and Barron Trump, a young boy of only 8 years old, intrigued everyone. Behind the scenes, their relationship deepened, transforming into an unlikely but genuine friendship. Finally, the premiere day arrived. The cinema was packed, filled with celebrities, journalists, and fans eager to see Clint Eastwood's latest work. Barron, seated next to the director, tried to hide his anxiety. When the film began, silence took over the room. The interconnected stories of generosity, overcoming adversity, and empathy moved everyone. In the final moments, silent tears streamed down the faces of many viewers. As the credits began to roll, the audience erupted in applause. The ovation was so intense it seemed endless. Clint Eastwood stood up to thank the audience, but instead of addressing the crowd alone, he pointed to Barron and said, "This boy is the true reason all of this happened." The cinema lights were still on when Clint called Barron to the stage. Reluctant but encouraged by the director, Barron stood up amid warm applause. He walked to the stage with hesitant steps, his heart racing. Taking the microphone, he looked out at the crowd and with a trembling voice began, "I always thought a simple gesture could make a difference, but today I see that sometimes these small acts can have a much greater impact than we imagine." The audience fell silent as Barron continued. "This film is not just a story. It's a reminder that we all have the power to transform the world around us, one action at a time." When he finished, the audience gave him a standing ovation. Clint, beside him, nodded with a satisfied smile, clearly proud of the young boy. The impact of the power of a gesture didn't stay confined to the screens. Quickly, social media was flooded with real-life stories of people inspired by the film. There were reports of strangers paying for each other's meals, neighbors reconciling after years of disagreements, and even people deciding to dedicate their time to community causes. The film's message echoed in every corner. Barron suddenly found himself in the spotlight, but he didn't let fame distract him from the true purpose. He began participating in charitable events and lectures, always advocating the importance of small gestures and actions that could bring about significant changes. Alongside Clint, he traveled to various cities promoting film screenings in schools, underprivileged communities, and charitable institutions. At one of these screenings, Clint was honored for his entire cinematic career. During his speech, he declared, "I've made many films in my life, But this one holds special meaning. It's not just about cinema, it's about life, about humanity. And I owe much of this to this young boy, Barron Trump, who reminded me of the value of kindness in small acts. At the end of the ceremony, Barron also took the stage to speak. Today, more than ever, I understand that kindness is not just a choice. It's a responsibility we all carry. Every small gesture, no matter how simple it seems, has the power to change lives. We don't need to wait for a great opportunity to make a difference. We can start now. After months of tremendous success, the impact of the power of a gesture continued to grow. Clint and Barron were invited to numerous interviews, but they always made sure to shift the focus to the film's message, inspiring more people to practice acts of empathy and generosity. On a quiet day, sitting on a bench overlooking the city, Barron looked at Clint and said, "I never thought giving up a seat on a plane could lead to all of this." Clint laughed softly before responding, "Life is like that, kid. Sometimes the simplest gestures create the greatest transformations." Barron's gaze wandered for a moment to the horizon, reflecting on everything that had happened. He smiled, certain that there was still much to do. "What do you think about inviting people to continue this chain?" Clint raised an eyebrow and asked, "Have you ever imagined if everyone shared their stories of kindness, inspiring others to do the same?" Barron nodded, determined. And so, they moved forward, spreading a message of hope and action. The power of a gesture, after all, was not just a movie title. It was a movement that would continue to transform lives.